Hi everyone, my name is Christian. I've been interning at Xano for a couple months now, and I'm excited to share with all of you my first tutorial video. In this video, I'm going to be creating a to-do list using WeWeb's front end and connecting it to my Xano backend. WeWeb is a drag and drop user interface that sits on top of your Xano database. You can think of it as a website that users can interact with. We're going to use Xano's API endpoints to authenticate users and allow them to populate records in our database. Now, there are three things you're going to need in order to start this. We're going to go ahead and head over to the marketplace in Xano, and you're going to want to pick up this starter template. Once you're done with that one, we're going to want to scroll down and grab this to-do list template. Lastly, we're going to need a WeWeb.io account. So sign up, log in, and we're going to create a project together. But first, let's go ahead and see what we get out of these templates. Head over to the database, and let's go over to the to-do one. So you see, this table is already filled with some dummy data, but we're going to want a little bit more from this. So first, we're going to want a table reference to our users, and right now I have a couple users, so I'm going to go ahead and put myself right here. And the next thing we're going to want is I want people to be able to store images in this to-do list. So let's go ahead and call this image. Next, let's do a text one and call it category. And lastly, let's do due date. So I've authenticated this this record right here to myself. Order pizza for dinner. I'm gonna go ahead and throw in this image of a pizza as well, but we could leave category and due date blank for now. Now let's see what the API has for us. So this is all from just the template, and that user was something I had put in previously, but you may have your own users, or you may just have the dummy data users that the starter template comes with. In either case, let's go ahead and see what this get to do API endpoint looks like. So first things first, I want to delete this search actually, because I don't want my users to have to search for anything in order to see what they're authenticated to. I want them to be able to just see whatever records they have in the database. Next thing is I want to change this custom query right here, and I want the to do dot user ID. Oh, it's right there. To equal and go on to the auth. I want it to equal the auth ID. And what this does is just another layer of protection to make sure that users only see what they're authenticated to. All right, that one looks pretty good. Let's go back and let's make sure this is actually authenticated. And we can go ahead and do that with this one as well. Actually, we'll worry about that later. So one thing I almost forgot, let's go ahead and go back onto this get to do. Click on this function stack right here. We're going to head over to external, and we can just go ahead and delete this because, again, we're not searching for anything. Users are just going to see what they are authenticated to. The next thing we want to do is we want to head over to WeWeb.io. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. And I already have a workspace. And for you guys who do not have a project yet, go ahead and click this create or duplicate project. And all I've done so far is I've just created this basic layout template. So that's what I'm going to go on to right now. And I've just already named it Xano tutorial, but it's just the basic layout. Let's see what we have. All right. So if you click over here onto this pages right here, we can see there are 4 pages. And we're not going to actually need to worry about 3 and 4. We're going to end up deleting those, but let's go back to the login. And once we're here, we want to click on this puzzle piece up here, and we want to go down to Authentication and grab this Xano Auth plugin. So we're going to need to go back into Xano, and we're going to need to get the login, the get me endpoint, and signup endpoint. And we're going to need to paste those URLs right there. So going back into Xano and this is in our starter template. So it's under the basic auth. So you can go ahead and click this button and copy the endpoint. So this is the login. So we just paste that right here. The me endpoint and the signup endpoint. All right, got those all good. And we want to make our homepage just the login homepage. And right here, we're just going to call it role. All right, cool. Got that all set up. Now, before we can get users to see what they're authenticated to, we need them to be able to log in and get authenticated in the first place. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that workflow. So clicking on this button up here, this is how we're going to be able to make edits to our web page. Click on this little lightning bolt, that's our workflow. And actually, I want it to be on, make sure it's this entire form container. And if it's not on the form container, it will yell at you and tell you that you're not on the right thing. Like if I try to go on this login button, you're going to see this, and it'll automatically send you to the entire form container. So now we can create the workflow for logging in to Xano through WeWeb. And the template, the basic layout template that we had chosen with WeWeb, automatically sets this all up for us. So all we have to do is choose our action right now. And we want to hit this login request. And this is actually the API endpoint that you put into WeWeb just a second ago. So it's going to use that basic auth login from the starter template. And WeWeb automatically knows in its signup or in its work form, which is the email and which is the password. So we're going to use that email value, and we're going to use this password value. And once we have a user logs in, we want to change the page to our to-do list. Now I haven't created that yet, so let's go ahead and create a page right now, and we'll call it to-do list. We could do that. There we go. And this will be to-do. And we'll just have it created from an empty page for now. All right, head back over to login, and we still need to actually put in that page. All right, so now in theory, if you have a user right now in your Xano database, you should be able to log in and it will send you to the to-do list. If you don't, we'll create the sign up process so that you can create a user and do that exact same process. All right, so let's go over to the sign up page. And same thing, we're gonna click on this workflow right here. And this template automatically calls it login, but we'll rename it to sign up because we are on the sign up page, and we'll call this sign up to Xano. And again, this is the basic auth sign up endpoint URL that you plugged in earlier. So we're going to go ahead and grab the email variable, the password variable, and the name. And once a user signs up and gets submitted into your Xano database, we want to log them in to their to-do list. So let's go ahead and do another action, a login action, grab those same variables, email and password. And one more action, we're going to change the page to that to-do list. All right. So I already have a user of myself. So I'm going to go ahead and do the login page. If you don't have a user, make one right now. Enter in the password, email address. It'll automatically update into your Xano database, and you'll be able to be sent to the to-do list. So I'm going to go to login, and I'm going to sign up with my own user that I have myself, and enter in the password that I know. And logging in, we are sent to our to-do list. A blank page, but you did it. All right, so let's go ahead and delete these 2 pages, 3 and 4. If you remember, I said that we don't need these 2. I'm not going to worry about them, and they're just kind of taking up room right now. So in order to start our to-do list, let's click on this Add New section. We're going to throw this section right here. Going back into the this plus button right here, we're going to throw this Kanban, and that's actually going to be our to-do list. So let's go ahead and include everything. It just has dummy data as well to start with. All right. So in order to get authenticated data to be displayed on WeWeb, we need to use that get to do API endpoint. And in order to do that, we click this button up here, and we're going to add a plugin. So we need to add a data source plugin. So grab this Xano data source plugin, and you're going to need your Xano API dev key. So WeWeb is kind enough to have a link to our docs on how to find it. I happen to have mine handy, so I'm going to just put it in right here. And I'm on a free instance, so nothing fancy here. And we're going to add this collection. So I'm going to call it user data. And our source is Xano. And as I said, we want to go into our to-do API group, and we need to use that get API, as I said earlier. And right here, you can see that we have one item, and it's that order pizza for dinner item. Cool. So let's go ahead and finish that up. And so we still don't see it, and that's normal. We haven't actually changed any of these elements to display the right data. But WeWeb now has access to our data through that API endpoint. So in order to stop displaying this dummy data in WeWeb, let's go ahead and click on this navigator right here, hit this drop down, and we can see these are all the page elements right here. Go ahead and click on that one. Oh, we need to go into the editor. Right here, under Kanban, and on this middle column right here, we see this specific Kanban fake items. That's our dummy data. Well, we don't want to display that. We want to display our users' data. And now that we added this collection in WeWeb, we can see that right here. So let's go ahead and actually do our data, and we want to stack it by our category. Now we still don't see it, but if we add this uncategorized stack, well, now we happen to see an item. One thing to note, if you don't happen to see anything here, make sure that in your Xano database, you have authenticated this to the user you signed up with or logged in with. Once you do that, if I were to change this, I wouldn't see this anymore. I can create an entire new record right here. Drink water. And we'll go ahead and say it's important. And we're going to authenticate it to my Steve Jobs user in my user database, or my user table. And I'm going to put this this here. And we can go ahead and add, type in work in progress, WIP right there, and that'll actually shift it in WeWeb as well. Shift the card, that is. And right here as well, sure, we'll have both of them as work in progresses. All right, so now if I go back here and I update this, as you see, so in progress, we have one item and only one item. If I had not authenticated that, I would see all items. So that's why this authenticated data is very important. So let's go ahead and start looking at the object, or looking at our data now. So I'm going to go ahead and go into this navigator. I'm going to go all the way down and till I see image right here. So it's inside, let me just close those for clarity. It's inside this item stack. And here, I'm going to hit this plugin button. And I want it to grab the image URL. There we go. The image URL. And now we see some nice pizza. All right. So we can do the same thing with pretty much everything else. You can also click on the element if that's faster for you. So let's go ahead and just delete all that. And we want the task name to be right there to display. All right. So now we got ourselves a nice pizza card that says order pizza for dinner. The next thing I want to do is I actually want to click onto this icon right here, and I'm going to create this color. So click this button right here, these 6 little dots in the corner. I'm going to create a color. I'm going to call it gray, and I just want it exactly as it is. And click that button one more time. And I'm going to want to create another color. And let's go ahead and create an orange color. More orange. There we go. That's going to be good. So the reason why I'm doing this is because if my item is marked as important, I want it to actually change that icon's picture. So I want it to display orange if it is important. And the way to do that is actually by going into this color statement right here. And we're going to go ahead and do an if statement right here. So if the item is important, and that is, if that is true, then we're going to go ahead and go into our colors right here under this middle one and go under colors. And if it is important, we're going to display orange. And if false, we want gray. So in order to tell if that's actually true, we have important right here, and it is marked as important. So it is displaying correctly. However, just to test that, let's go back here, unmark that, and refresh the page, and we should see that it's a gray lightning bolt now. And it is, in fact, a gray lightning bolt. So I'm going to go ahead and mark ordering for pizza as important, refresh one more time, and we will see an orange lightning bolt appear. Awesome. Now I'd like to make a note that this exact process would be done for the complete icon as well. If we wanted to somehow show users that something was complete, we could set this entire process as the exact same way. So I won't be covering it twice. Just know that you can do the same thing. Add an icon onto this card, change the color if it's complete with that exact same logic as before. One thing to note that you might have noticed is that wherever our card is, it's actually getting rid of this add card. And that's because the add card has a little bit of logic with it to start with in Kanban. And we're just going to go ahead and get rid of that because I want that card to always appear. Sorry, you just unbind it. All right. So now this add card will always come up if we just unbind it and leave the display on. So one last thing we want to add into this card is actually displaying the due date. So if you remember, I made it a text. So we're going to throw in this text UI, and we're going to go ahead and click on it. Click this under specific, change the plug to due date. And right now in Xano, I don't have a due date. But if we go in here, and I'm just going to fill it out as today. Oop, not 2002. And now just update this. We should see it display August 26th, 2022. So now that we have, and every card will actually follow this exact formatting that we've just set up. Now we want to form the ability to create new cards all through WeWeb. We don't want to be going to Xano and creating cards like that. So we want users to be able to create their card right here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a form container right here. And we want to just throw it off to the left right here. So now that we got our form container, let's go ahead and start filling it out with everything it needs. Oh, there we go. And you're going to want to drag and drop this right on top of it, just like that. New card form. And right here, if we click on the short answer and go into the middle column, we can actually change the placeholder text right there. So I'm going to call it task name. The other things we need in this card form is important, the due date, and the image upload so that users can upload all of this and create a card on their own. So we're going to go back into our elements. And the next thing is we want a checkbox. And we want to just throw that right underneath. And double clicking this one, you can change the name. And I'm going to say high priority question mark. So if this gets checked, it'll be marked as important in our Xano database. We want to throw in another element, and I'm going to scroll all the way down to this date picker one. Sorry if my camera gets in the way. All right, so we're just throwing it right underneath this priority checkbox. And this will allow users to submit a time that will be displayed right here. And last but not least, we want them to have the ability to upload a file. And that's going to be right here under form file upload. And just like that, we have our new card form complete. And click on this eyeball, and we're going to see this new card form. And I want to just type in something for now so that we can at least see it when we start editing stuff. So I'm just going to put apply sunscreen. I'm going to say that's important. And I'm going to mark it as I want to do that on Wednesday the 25th. Uploading a file, I happen to have a sunscreen image just handy. So we got that all filled out. Now we're going to actually go ahead and go into our Xano database, go into our APIs, and go into our to-do API group. In this API group, we're actually going to need to start editing this to-do post API. One of the first things we want to do is we actually want to change this image. We're actually going to have to recreate everything in here, unfortunately, but that's okay. That's just the way the template works. So let's start from the top. First things first, we want a user ID number. This is under integer. Next, we're going to want a text field called task. The next thing, we'll grab the due date. Let's go ahead and put in a Boolean, and that'll be important. One more Boolean. And this one will be complete. And again, I'm not really covering complete too much in this tutorial, but that's okay. It's pretty much going to be the exact, treated the same way as important if you want to do it yourself. Another text category. And lastly, we want to go into the storage, and we want a file resource and call that image. So I'm going to throw in some logic into our function stack, and I'm actually going to just delete this one just for it'll make things a little bit easier if we make it ourselves. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go into this data manipulation and I want a conditional. So I want to say if our image is not null, then we want to create image metadata. Oh, saving. The image metadata was created and it's stored as a variable. And now we can add a record to our to-do database and make sure everything is correct in here because I did have to remake it all. And we can actually always leave this as false. Again, you'd handle the logic here on WeWeb side and you would just send an API to change it, which we'll cover later on. This image should be the variable that was created from creating the image file, the metadata, I should say. All right. And if there is no image, then we'll have to create a record without the image in our to-do table. So we're just going to actually blank this one out and make sure the rest are just the same. And we're going to save that. One last thing to make sure is let's turn on authentication to make sure that only authenticated users can post into our Xano database and create cards. And now that this API endpoint has been created, we're going to go ahead and head back into WeWeb and we're going to start editing this new card form container. We want to go into its workflow. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to have to change this to on submit. So we're submitting the entire work form. You don't want it to be on click of the button for the new card form. You want it to be submitting. That way it can grab all the values. And our first piece of logic here is going to be a pass-through condition where we want to see if there is an image being uploaded. Oh. So we're going to go ahead and go into this function button right here. And if there is a file, then we're going to mark it true. And if there isn't, then false. And it's true right now because if you remember, I put in that sunscreen from earlier. And so it knows that there is something there at the moment. I just haven't done anything. All right. Next thing we want to do is we want to upload a file. So in order for Xano to get the image, we have to first send it to them before we can actually do the post logic or API call, I should say. So doing this action will upload the image to Xano before we actually do the post and make sure that it's correct. So next thing we want to do is we want to do a Xano API request. And we're going to go ahead and go into our to-do API group. And then we will do the post. Make sure it's not the post ID. The one that we edited was just post to do. So let's start marking down our fields. Our user ID, if we want to go into here, and we can pick up our Xano authenticated user ID. And this number correlates with, if I go over here into Xano, my user database, you can see right here that I am user number 6. And that is where we're getting this. And this is all done through the Xano Authentication plugin. All right, so the task, we want the value that's written in the short answer value. And I should have renamed these to be more clear on what they were. But filling out this, you can kind of tell what it is. So our short answer is actually our task. Our due date is going to be our date picker value. Important is going to be the checkbox value. and I had it checked as true at the moment. Complete, we always want it to be false because when you first make a card, you can't, I mean, there's no point in creating a completed card, I guess. Category, we want this unbound for now. I almost forgot that. In order to actually get our image value, what we have to do is we have to first send it to Xano, and you can see it was a success. I sent that sunscreen image to my Xano, and now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go into this lightning bolt, and from this action right here, action 2, because action 1 is this pass-through condition, I want to grab the URL, and that is actually the image right there. And you have to do this with how Xano stores images. This is the best way. All right. And so as you know, or as you have seen, we've left category blank and complete is false. All the rest are filled in with their associated values. So there's only a couple more things we need to do inside this workflow. But before I can do that, I'm going to have to start being clear on what's happening. So this workflow will be called submit new card. And this action will actually be the submit new card as well, because this is actually the API that's going to handle submitting a new card to Xano. And then I want to actually go back here, and I need to rename some of these so that they're more clear. So go into the navigator, go inside the form container, and we're going to hit this short answer one. We're going to call that task. This checkbox should be named important. Image upload. Oh, I already actually renamed that one. But go ahead, and if this was normally, I think, file 1, I renamed it to image upload. And this will make it easier to see these variables inside of our workflow. So let's go ahead and do this now. So what I'm going to do next is create a bunch of these reset variables values. And basically what it's going to handle is when you submit a new card, we don't want that old data to remain. So we need to reset these back to their default, which should be a blank slate or what have you. And important. So that handles all of it. Our task value, whatever is submitted in that new card form, our image upload, we want all of these things to go back to being blank once we've submitted something. All right. And last but not least, we need to do one more Xano request. Actually, it's not a Xano request, my bad. It's actually a fetch collection, because you remember that collection that we added, which was user data. This is actually how people see what they have, their records. So we need to update or upload the web page whenever something gets submitted so that they can see what's been submitted. So in order for us to be able to actually submit a card and then refresh it with this fetch collection, we're going to have to do a couple things that I forgot to do. Sorry about that. Head over back to Xano, and we're going to go back to the API and go to the to-do API. Now in here, there was a couple things I forgot to do. And that is first, in this create image from file, I forgot to actually set the image file as our value. And that's very important. And another thing is you'll want to delete whatever's in here and just save it just like that. The last thing we'll want to do in order to get this to submit is head over back to WeWeb, and we're going to actually create a variable. So right here under this little button right here, create a variable, and we're going to call it get category, because we have it currently that category cannot be null. And we're going to want to save it, and it's going to be a type of text. And this is just in order for us to see that the category does get submitted, just to see that the card gets submitted. So back into our submit new card button, if we fill in that variable as get category now. And so now when category is filled in with this get category and everything has been fixed on Xano's side, we should, oh, I have to refill this. And make sure if you are getting any kind of errors, make sure to go back into the login page and re-sign in with your user, because the authentication only lasts for so long. So it could be frustrating if you are making these edits and you attempt to submit it the same time I do and it's not working for you. Always try this first. Just re-log in, because it just lasts only for so long. So we're going to head back into there. Let's refill this out together and reapply this. And I'll do it in the work form before submitting the button. So we have our sunscreen has been uploaded to Xano, and we have a success on the new card. I'm sorry if this was frustrating for you guys, if you were being signed out or logged out. You do have to go back and re-log in. If you've noticed like 401 errors especially, that usually means your authentication has been timed out and you'll have to re-log in. All right. So now if we're to run all of this back in our page, we see an uncategorized right here sunscreen. And I can actually submit this right now, and we should see another one pop up right there. Awesome. So right now the category is blank. We will have to fix that. So we want a user to be able to press this add button, and we want it to go under whatever category they press the add card button corresponding with. So we're going to have to add some logic into the add card button. So let's go into the workflow, and on click, we want to change that category button that we grabbed earlier with our item value. And make sure it's the value, not the label, because that's going to be the one you want. So now we fill in the category label, and if we go back to this submit button, let's just hit here, apply sunscreen. Actually, we'll have to click this, click one of these add cards. So I click the to do one, apply sunscreen, and we should see it appear under to do. There it is. Awesome. That is really good. Actually, one more thing then. We'll want to go into here, and we'll want to make sure we actually reset that value as well every time. So get category, we'll reset it once we submit it, so that every time when we click on a new button, something new. So if I click on this one, apply sunscreen, should head over to done. And now if I click on another button, it'll head to that one as well. So I'm going to really quick clean up my workspace so that it looks better for you guys. So I just quickly went into my Xano database and deleted all those sunscreen ones, just so that it looks better and it's easier to work with. So right now, what we want to do is we want to actually make another variable. And this one will be called show new card form. And we want it to be a type Boolean. We want to always save that one in our storage. And we're going to go back into the workflow of this button here. And when we click this, we want that show, we want to change the variable value of that show new card to become true. So if we head back out here and we click on this guy, our new card form container, we want to go into this button right here and click on this display plug. And what we're going to do is we only want to see the new card form when somebody clicks on add card. So what we do is we change the display to be based on the show. Is there a search? Oh, right here. Show new card. So once that gets clicked, we now see it. And currently there's no way to reset it, but we'll fix that. So just as a quick recap, we've created the ability to create cards and records in our Xano database. And when you grab one of these add card buttons or click them, it now grabs the category associated with it and stores that as a variable, which then is stored in our Xano database. So the last thing we need to do, well, not last thing, I should say, we need to grab a new element, and I'm going to grab an icon. I'm going to throw it right here on the side of this new card form, and I want its alignment to be top left. And let's go ahead and actually change this icon. We're going to go into hero icons, and I want something that looks like a back button, so I'm going to grab that one right there. And I want this one to have workflow of changing or resetting that show new card. So now when you click that, it'll reset it back to false, which we won't see the submit button or the submit new form anymore. So clicking that, of course, we need to also give it its own, but adding a card will bring this new card form back up, and clicking that back button will get rid of it. Let's go ahead and also change the display for this back button to be associated with the show new card button or new card variable. Show new card. There we go. So now when we click this back button, cool. Everything goes away when we don't want it to be there. And just as one last thing, you can go ahead and go into display and change this cursor to actually a pointer. And so now you'll actually get a little bit of feedback in that. You can now do that. Cool. All right, so the next thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and click this add new card button. And we want to actually grab this icon again, and we're just going to copy it. And we want to paste it right next to that icon, or to those three dots right there. And as you see, it pastes it on all four of them. As I was telling you, anything you do to one card, it does it to all of them. So that's a really handy thing. We are going to have to go into the logic and change it a bit because we don't want this back button to have anything to do with this one. But first, let's create a couple new variables. So we're going to want show options. So when somebody clicks on those three black dots right there, we basically want like an options thing, and that's where these back buttons are going to come into play. So this is going to be also a type Boolean, save it in storage, and one more Boolean, and it's going to be called delete card. All right. The next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to grab a button, and we want to put it right there. And we're going to go ahead and double click this, and we're going to call it delete card. And we're going to give it a red background. And if you don't have that color, you can just make it yourself, of course. Next, we're going to want another icon. We're going to want to put it right about there. Oh, that's not right. Let me delete that one. How about right there? That's fine. So if we go into this one, this little icon right here, we want to X, and it's right there to the right. It was in the WeWeb icons, and it's just right here. And we're going to want that color to also be that same red. So now we need to go into the workflow of this 3 black dot icon right here. And what we want to do is we want this, when someone clicks it, to have those buttons appear as options. So what we want to do is we want to change variable value of show options to become true. And what we'll do is we'll have both of these 2 icons, or this button and this icon, will have their display be dependent on that variable. So if show icon or show options is false, then we don't see it. If it's true, we will see it. And grab this one as well. And this is exactly what I was talking about, how we're going to want to change the workflow in this. So we don't actually want it to say that. What we want that to do is show options, reset the show options. Not the show new card, but the show options. We want to reset that. All right. And so now, if we go into here, let me click on that. So now we see this delete card. We'll also fix that that back button right there. But we need this delete card to show up because we need to add a workflow on it. And we need it to change a variable. And that'll be delete card to become true. And we also needed to display this. We want this one instead of being the, this is the back button. So instead of this show new card form to be the dependency for the back button, we want the dependency to be show options, just like the delete button. So now, if we click that, now if we click these black dots, it shows these 2 buttons. Last but not least, but we need to change this red X to only appear if we click this delete card. So we'll change the display to be a variable. Gotta hide that. Delete card, there we go. So if delete card is true, then it comes up. So when we click that, now it shows up because we added that workflow. Oh, I also want in the workflow of this arrow to not only reset the show options, but also reset the delete card. Ooh, reset variables, and let's reset the delete card. Cool. So now when we click this black dot button, everything disappears. And if you click this delete card button, then this red X appears. And now we just need to add the workflow in this red X. So when we go into the workflow of this red X, we want it to be on click, and we want to make a Xano request. We're going to go into that to-do API group. And we're going to go ahead and hit that to delete. And we want to delete the ID that's associated with this card. So what we do is we just go right here, item data ID. Make sure it's not the authenticated user's ID because that would delete the wrong card. We only want to delete the card that they click the button on. So now if I were to click this red X button, which I guess I'll just do, oh, forgot one thing. Need to always refresh, fetch a collection, and user data. That way, we always need to add a refresh whenever we make an API call that either changes, adds, or deletes something, you always need to call that fetch collection. So if I were to refresh this page, it will be deleted. I can add another one just to show you that it works exactly as intended. So as we see, that is gone. And we can actually add a workflow that will have everything reset every time we open up this page. But let's go ahead and add a new card. So we're going to go ahead and create a new record. I already got it started up right here. And let's go ahead and submit it. And we should see it appear right there where I click the Add Card button. And now we're going to get into being able to edit certain things about this. So first things first, let's actually delete some of the stuff we're not using right here, like that icon and that one. And you probably would want this to be actually this text group and vice versa. But that's okay. You guys can make this however you want it. I'm just showing you the functionality and how to do certain things about it. So anyway, when we click on this little icon, we want it to be able to change, make an API call to Xano to change its category, which in turn will change the color of it. So if I head over to Xano, I head over to the to-do API group, I want to actually make a new API endpoint in the to-do one, and I want it to be an edit. I'm going to rename this to-do change important. And I want it to be user authenticated. And before I go into that, I want to make one more. And it'll be called to-do change category. So we want users to be able to change the category and change whether something is important or not. The important will go with the little icon, the little lightning bolt icon, and changing the category will change where they are in the stack. So let's go ahead and let's start with important. So what do we need? Well, we don't need the task. We don't need to know if it's completed or not. We should get the user ID. We should get the ID of the card, and we should get the Boolean of important because we want to be able to change the important. So everything else we can just make hidden from the API. Text. Alrighty. And now that we only have the inputs that we care about, let's go into the function stack and do the same thing where we only want to have the things that we care about. And right there, it's the, we care about the ID, we care about whether it's important or not, and we care about the user's ID because we don't want a different user being able to edit another user's cards, if something like that were possible. All right, so everything's saved here. So let's head over to the change category and let's do the same thing. So we're going to go ahead and make this task invisible because we don't care about that when we're changing the category. Completed doesn't matter. This important doesn't matter. The user ID we care about. This we don't. This we don't care about. And lastly, we don't care about that. And I just realized I did make the category hidden. My mistake. Got a little ahead of myself, got a little excited. So this is the change category. Make sure that category is not hidden. But we do want to hide the rest of the stuff that we don't care about. User ID, due date, image. So we should have category is not hidden, user ID not hidden, and the IDs not hidden. So now that these API endpoints are created on Xano's side, let's go ahead and go back to WeWeb and add the functionality here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the icon right here, this little orange lightning bolt. and I'm going to add a workflow to it. So I'm going to change a variable value, and I actually haven't created this value yet, so let's go ahead and do that together. There is a little plus button that you could create a variable, or you could just go up here and do it the old-fashioned way. And we're going to call this important, and it's going to be a Boolean, and that's fine. Save it in local storage, and basically what we want to do is once we grab the important value, we want to give it a little logic. So if I click on an orange lightning bolt, I want to set it to gray or unimportant. If you remember, orange is important, gray is unimportant. So what we need to do is we need to make a little switch statement. So go ahead and go in that function, click switch, and what we're going to do is grab the important value, or the item that is important, and what we want to say is if it's true, set it to false. If it's false, set it to true. That way, every time we click it, what it's going to do is just change that variable value, that Boolean value. Once we've created this variable and gave it its logic, we're going to go ahead and make that Xano request API call, go into the to-do API group, and we're going to go ahead and call the change important. So what we need to do is for the to-do ID, we need to grab the ID of the card we want to change, and we need to grab that important variable that we just made, because with that logic, it'll change it every time we click it. And last but not least, let's grab the user's authentication ID number, and always fetch your collection, refresh the page. That's wrong, not the right one. Fetch collection, not fetch user. Fetch that user data, because this will always refresh the page. So if we didn't have this, we wouldn't actually see the orange change the gray or the gray change the orange. We would just have it just wouldn't change. It would change on Xano's side, but not on WeWeb side. So we need to always refresh the page whenever you make a change like this. So now, if I go here and click on it, we see that little lightning bolt change from orange to gray, and we can change it back and forth. So the last thing we need to do is we need to have, if I move a card over to this section, I want it to change its category in Xano to the category that it's associated with now, not the previous one. I don't want it to be a work in progress anymore if I move it over to done, and I don't want it to be a to-do if I move it to in progress. So I need to add a little bit of workflow. So go ahead and go onto this single stack, and we're going to add a workflow. And before we actually get started, let's create a new variable. We're going to call it moved card. This is going to be a object type, and go ahead and save that. So what this is going to do is, first we want to change this this here trigger. We want to change it to on item added, and what that will do is when an item gets moved and added onto a new stack, we're going to grab that card, change variable value. I want to grab that moved card value or variable, and I want to set it to the event item. And this won't grab anything at the moment because nothing's been added, but just roll with me for a second here. We also want to change the get category. So get category. I want to change it to the new category that it's being moved to. And once we do that, we're going to make a Xano request. We're going to go into that to-do API group, and and we're going to go into that change category one that we did earlier. So we're grabbing the ID of that card. So it should be, this is the part. So what we need to do is actually move a card in order to do this workflow. And now we're going to go back into it, and we see now it's actually grabbed a card because we've moved one. So now what we can do, and it's stored it into these variables. We've stored the category as well. And we want to grab the moved card right here. And we see it's the only card, but it would grab whatever card you moved. And we want to grab the ID number. We want to grab the user's authentication ID. And we want to grab the category of get category. So otherwise, if we didn't grab it from this move card, we wouldn't be able to see which card it was that got moved. So that's the whole purpose of this object. And so now, if I move this card, it should be, in theory, done in our Xano database. So let's go over to this, to do, and now we see its category is done instead of a work in progress. So heading back here, little recap. Users are authenticated and can only see what is authenticated to them. As you saw in my Xano database, I never once saw this card. If I were to log in fact, let me just do that right now. Let me go to the login page, and you might have already done this yourself just to be sure. I'll sign in as my Steve at Apple. And look at that. He has a completely different database that he's reading from. I mean, it's not a different database, but he's authenticated to different items in the database. Users can click on this add card. They can create cards themselves. They can read the card. They can change the functionality. And actually, I didn't mess with this too much, but it's pretty much the same idea. All you have to do is go into this navigator. You navigate to it. It's this bottom one right here. And so all I would do is navigate to it. As you can see, it's this very bottom one. Go into the details, and then you grab that image. You go into the specific, and all you have to do is click that same plugin button, and you can go ahead and go into the user's data, and you should be grabbing their image URL, just like the other ones. And as you can see, it's a very close-up picture of the water. But yeah, so just to recap, like I said, we can now get data, authenticated data from Xano. We can have authenticated users create data into our database. We can edit, delete. We have all the functionality needed. It is up to you guys now to make this pretty. Customize it however you'd like. And I'll see you all in the next video.